without further ado, I'm not even sure where I'm gonna cut in for the audio just to stick this part in for the episode or when it's gonna start, but might as well get right into it because we're probably gonna take a more, shall we say, is realistic or relevant the right word here, or a slower topic to talk about here? On
real shit.
Yeah, real shit.
We're just gonna talk real shit.
On like burnout or overwork or just looking at life in general. Just to zoom out a little bit more than the usual Japan shit, but I'm pretty sure there's gonna be something in there.
Oh
that's gonna be kind of Japanese. So, without further ado, ようこそKanpai Chronicles no podcast. I'm not even sure if I said that properly. I'm not sure what's the katakana for podcast. Podcast. I think podcast. Anyway, welcome to Kanpai Chronicles with your host Norman and
Holly.
Yes, and with the both of us, we're gonna talk about all things, either life, real shit, real gangster shit, anything from our experiences and our observations of the world and in Japan, where the both of us used to live there for quite a while. But in this episode, I think we want to take a step back because the both of us, well, I'm not sure if you want to share it from your end, but for myself, I've had a pretty shitty week. Like this week has been so bad. And I think the best evidence of this week being bad is that I don't remember much of it. Right. Like when you have a day, like if you have days where there's just nothing of significance happening during those days, you start to question yourself, at least for me, I start to question if I've actually lived during those days. Like, did I just slog through it, or did I just have I actually done something meaningful? So I've had a pretty crappy week. I'm going to be very honest. But Holly, how about you?
Kind of the same as like we were talking before about like nothing about the week or anything that's happened is like particularly like shitty. Like nothing has happened, but I've been feeling that way too this week. Really, just kind of like unmotivated and kind of like I feel like this week I've spent a lot of time literally laying on my floor with just like some music and like staring at my ceiling fan. Like I feel like that has been most of my time. And it's like I know I've done things like go to work or even like socialize a bit with like the people I live with, but it's kind of the same for me. Like I don't really feel like there's any like concrete like essence in my mind that I have like been a human being this week. Like I've just kind of been like drifting almost. Like it feels like no time has passed, I guess. I'm just floating about and in some sort of odd feeling. You can't really pinpoint.
Yeah. It's hard to articulate. It's quite similar for me as well. I lose track of time. So the equivalent for me of laying down on the floor listening to music is just reading manga. Like I have a lot of vices, actually, like a lot of things that just distract me or give me some form of pleasure where it'll distract me from what I'm meant to do or what I want to do. And this is from like a talk that we had like off of the show, but like on hesitation and on fear, because sometimes there are things that I want to do, but I hesitate to do them because there's this inherent fear behind either the failure or the responsibility of it or the dependency of it. And because of that, I have a lot of vices in many different mediums that help me. Manga is one of them, and the other one is alcohol, which as per the signature for Kanpai Chronicles is to get this in the microphone. Okay. Drinking my thoughts away. Or escapism, right? Some form of escapism. And I think that's a really good thing to address in this show, because we're going to be facing burnout or overwork or exhaustion in many different forms or many different types. But I thought it'd be great to actually reflect on that. And like for anyone listening, like it similar to Holly, I nothing actually happened this week, right? It's just
Yeah.
I'm just so out of it. That's pretty much it. But I can't really articulate why I'm feeling out of it. But I thought that it'll be a very good exercise or a very good chance to actually reflect on how burnout or lack of energy plays a part in our lives, and see how the both of us differ, because maybe you faced it differently than I have, and maybe we've had some common ones, and maybe there were times in Tokyo where we've had similar experiences. But maybe I'd start off by asking, do you remember the first time you've had burnout? Like super, like just out of it? Like
I was
a
just
very early.
born burnt out, Norman. I just came out the vagina, like done with everything. Like, it's hard for me because I feel that my sort of like autopilot is a bit like that feeling, but there's different degrees to it. And
Yeah.
as I've like gone through my life and I've tried to become more like self-aware and really try to pinpoint like where my feelings and stuff come from, I guess my ways of like handling it have changed, where it's like before it used to be more of like kind of like you said, like I would have many different sort of distractions. Um but sometimes that for me will make it worse because I get this like hyper obsessive like thought of like I need to be doing something, I need to distract myself, I need to like do something productive even though I'm feeling like I don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I'll literally jump from like thing to thing, like 15 minutes doing something and it doesn't make me feel better, so I'd like jump to something else, and that doesn't make me feel better, so I jump to something else, and then I'm like, you start to feel worse because like nothing is helping. Whereas the past couple months, I would say I've tried to be more um kind of accepting of that feeling and just sort of like sitting in it. Like, I'm feeling like uncomfortable right now. I don't really know why. And then I kind of just let myself feel that. Like, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, I try to just like feel it and not think about it, which is hard. Like sometimes it just happens, and then other times like I'll feel really restless and agitated. Um but if I decide to like sit down and do something, like this week I've finished like 2 paintings. I sat down and did like 2 paintings because I was feeling that like I'm so unmotivated, like I'm a piece of shit, like I'm not doing anything. And so drawing and painting and stuff is something that helps me feel like calm and kind of shuts my mind off usually. Um so that's kind of like what I did this week. Or I've been, like you said, with like manga, like I've been trying to read a little bit more. Um Sometimes that makes it worse though, depending on like what you're reading, if it like gets your like thoughts going, because I'll be reading, but I won't actually be like absorbing the material. I'll be thinking about these thoughts that are like happening in my head. And then I'll be like, oh shit, like, well, what did these past 3 pages say? And but yeah, I don't know. I feel like that stuff is just like a practice, and it's so day by day, because I'll still have times where I'm feeling kind of down. Like in Tokyo, I didn't realize this at the time, but when I like think about it now, I think a lot of my like partying was actually just a result of being burnt out. And instead of like really knowing how to take care of myself, it was like, oh, I should go out and have fun with my friends.
Right.
Um and it's not that I wouldn't go out and have fun, but then it's still like the next day I'm still like, well, whatever I was like upset about or feeling, like usually it ends up being worse because I'm not addressing whatever like I probably need like mentally. And then in Tokyo, I'd often find myself quite like spiraling, because I would, instead of resting, I would go and try to like do things. I would think like these feelings are probably like things I need to like push down and bury versus like face. And then I feel like in Tokyo I didn't handle my burnout in a healthy constructive way. And I still
Is
get like
there
that
a way?
now.
Is there even a way to handle it in a healthy, constructive way? Like, I mean, there's the, there's the recognition of it, right? It's like, oh,
Mm,
why do I exhibit this sort of behavior? Why am I stuck reading manga for 12 hours a day, which is
yeah.
basically me? Why am I drinking my thoughts away? Why am I procrastinating from work when it's something that I enjoy doing, for example, but then I just don't want to do it? Or when am I suddenly exhausted whenever I think about like looking at my laptop, which is, these are actual thoughts that I have. Like
Right.
I get tired looking at my laptop.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
and you're seeing this room right now. Like, I mean, this show has a video version, of course, but um, this is my brother's room before he moved out of the house, and I turned it into the place where I do all the calls and everything. But I get tired walking into this room because this is the place where like, oh, responsibility comes up, or like people expect you to be here because you got to be on
Mhm.
calls, etc. And I mean, I don't want to address the big elephant in the room, and that is COVID. But
Yeah.
that's been a huge factor in just me not being able to add variety into my routine, like
Mhm.
not enough fresh air. Um, Everything is within one context, so you're just stuck. So the density of the chance of me just running out of energy is just multiplied because I use the same laptop to do whatever, like play games or watch Netflix or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden I get burnt out just sitting down here. I mean,
Yeah.
not now, of course, but like just throughout the day, like throughout a normal weekday, people expect you to be, to do certain things because being an adult, obviously.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but like comparing that to, because I was trying to think of this, like when I was trying to think of this episode and my relationship with burnout. Um, I don't think I ever had burnout until I had homework. Like the simplest form was
Mm,
homework, where, oh, you suddenly had a ton of homework, and this was in Malaysia, and like they give you like a ton of homework all in one go. You only have 3 days to finish it. I'm like, what the fuck? Then I can't say what the fuck because I was like, what, 8 years old or whatever it is. And I contrast that to moving to a school in Europe, and there was a lot less homework, or it was easier. And I was like, why
mm,
do I don't feel that tired doing the same thing that stressed me out when I was, at school
mhm.
somewhere else? So it came to realize that my burnout was my burnout is amplified when it concerns other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when it came to Japan, that amplified even further because one, you have the disconnect between society, which I think we talked about in another episode. Which you can create your own borders, your own bastion that way, which is cool. But the
Mhm.
second part is that you still have work to do at school. Like you still have to
Right.
do like, practice Japanese, practice your conversational skills. Make sure you're not swearing at your teacher by saying the kanji a little bit off,
Yeah.
or take into consideration the cultural nuances. Because what if you get that wrong? There's sometimes being actively conscious about socializing when in your home country that's such a normal thing, like it's so normalized, can be stressful. Like it's not like you've ever been to a place where you have to be very conscious about how you breathe. Like the only time that you'd have to be conscious about that is when like you're scuba diving and you don't want to breathe too much because you're going to run out of oxygen. Like you have to be very conscious about it. That takes a toll on your body because you have to spend so much brain power to do something that's supposedly automatic to be more active and more careful. So, when burnout became something that I started to expect, that scared me because in any other context, I found ways to recover from it. But when I was in Japan, I think similarly to you, I found it through just drinking myself away, or like dancing away, or just being in the comfort of friends away. But, you know, that can be a compromise in itself, because sometimes you take a toll on your body, like physically.
That's this is a little like backtracking, but you just made me realize something that I've like never thought of before about like the ways in which people grow up and like when they first experience like burnout, because I grew up in a very like survival mode sort of like life. And so I feel like default for me is always like kind of on edge and being aware of like other people and how like my actions or words and stuff could appropriate like a certain response from others. I never thought of people that like grew up in a more, I guess, like how you would stereotypically like imagine something, like the normal stressors of like wanting to do well in school or homework or like getting a first job and things like that. I'd never thought about like maybe some people making it to like being a teenager or like adulthood and never have experiencing burnout and how that would feel. Like I guess I got that a little bit like when I first came to college because I had thought um growing up I had kind of thought like, oh, something is wrong with me like as a person, like as a member of my family. And I thought like going to university and like living on my own and taking care of like myself in my own environment, like all those problems would go away and I would be like, I don't know, liberated or something. But I remember like my first semester of university when like you know your mind is how your mind is, like you can't escape like who you are.
Yeah.
And I remember there was like a good month where I just like stayed in my room for the most part. Like I would go to my classes and then just be in my room and not socialize with anyone and just be like so confused. Like, why am I not like feeling any better? Why do I feel so exhausted? Why do I feel so tired? So I guess maybe like I don't know, that would just be interesting to go and like observe people the very first time that they feel like burnout and you're trying to figure out like the fuck is wrong with me.
And the thing is, there's some biases there because it's you looking at yourself, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not like you could just pull your soul out of your body and be like, what the fuck is Holly doing? Oh my god, why are you just stuck in a room? Like,
Why is
because
she crying like that?
yeah, why are you lying on the floor? Like, what the fuck? The floor's dirty. Oh my god. It's the same for me. Like, I didn't know I was burnt out, and I was in uni in Australia. People may not notice, but I switched degrees because I was on the verge of failing.
Mhm.
I did like a med chem degree, and I was failing in biology. And then if I didn't pass the biology stuff, basically all those points would be moot. Like it'll be gone, because you need. I mean, obviously you got to know your biology to like make drugs for people. I mean,
Right, right,
sorry,
yeah.
pharmacy, like
Medicine, yeah.
pharmaceutical medicine. Gotta be very clear about that.
Drugs.
Disclaimer: we don't condone the usage of drugs or recreational drug usage. So just make sure everyone. So just so we're
I
protected
mean,
legally. Anyway, um, it's yeah. So during that time, I was so stressed that people had to tell me that I was different, and that was I only then realized that was in response to what was happening around me, that I was
mhm,
stressed and that I was burnt out. And
mhm.
so there came out a different side of me, or a different character that has my face, but I'm just more short tempered or more stressed, or I just don't want to talk to people, or I'm very confrontational, or I would just blow up. So sometimes my stress or my burnout can just be articulated in rage, or in just sadness or in pure sadness. And when it came to Japan, it was more sadness because a lot of those shocking factors would come in and you just have to adapt to them because that's part of your exchange program, right? Like, I mean, you know, you get paid to shock yourself in a foreign environment. Like that's like the best way to do it. And in relation to what you said about like observing people and how they handle stress, what was interesting to me was observing Japanese people or Japanese students, how they handle stress or burnout, because it's actually quite interesting, at least from what I see.
I thought, like, now that I'm thinking about it, you were actually like interesting to watch in those moments. Like, also, I'm not trying to, you know how I am. I'm not trying to be mean to you, but I remember like first becoming like your friend, and I think you've kind of mentioned this like before yourself, but like you, and I feel like a lot of people, like when they go abroad, you kind of create this like persona of yourself, like who you want to be in this like new place, because no one knows you. You get to kind of like have a clean slate and represent yourself a certain way. And the semester that I was there with you, it was always like fucking 110, like on the go, like is super outgoing, talking to everyone and trying to like do all this shit all the time. And so I did have like some sense of like, this person is kind of like fake. And I don't remember what it was, but I remember you getting like actually like pissed off one time. I think it was like the first time that I had like seen you mad, and you like it got in this like mood, and then you went off to like dance and do those things that you do when you're like frustrated. And I was like, oh. So this is Norman. Like this is Norman like as a person. Like once you like get through all the bullshit, like. And so then after that, like anytime, I feel like a bitch now. I never thought about this, but like anytime you would like get like upset, I was like kind of like, yeah, like Norman's gotta like confront himself now. Like, haha, like good for you. Like figure it out.
What an asshole. No, it's true. Like, yeah, I was pretty much a very sociable, outgoing guy during that semester. I mean, for both the semesters that I was there, for sure. Because like you said, it was a chance. I mean, for anyone doing exchange in any country, it's a clean slate. You don't know anyone there. And of course, there's the element of fear, but there's the, you know, the other side of fear is excitement. So like you're given a chance to recreate yourself in this context. So if you want to find out a way to arrive at the version of yourself who you aspire to be, then, you know, it's a good chance, especially on exchange. So I was more outgoing. Of course, that does mean that part of me trying to be this sociable, outgoing person is to not get pissed as much. And I don't really get pissed that much, or at least I don't blow up that much. But when I do, I do blow up. So I mean, there are like a few things that would really easily piss me off. But when I became conscious of that and became more aware of it, I wanted to take a lot more steps towards making sure that my rage does not affect other people. Because like, I think we said this like in the beginning, you know, you can't really change who you are. So I can't change the things that annoy me. The only thing I can do is control my response to those things. So whether it's my thoughts, or maybe those thoughts are automatic, sure. But whether it's the expression of those thoughts are, you know, end up me blowing up or just shouting or something, I'll just be like, fuck, or like at uni, which is obviously not a good thing to do. So I guess that can be seen as fake, because if all people can see me as just this guy that's just outgoing and nothing more, that I have no flaws, how human am I really, right? So it's actually good that you pointed this out, because because I'm not like the best student during those times. Like I had flaws. I've done bad stuff as well, and I've gotten pissed, I've gotten sad, I fought with people, etc. So it's nice to know that that you've noticed that. And during those times, like there were times where I just was not outgoing or sociable. I was
Yeah.
stressed out because of uni. I was stressed about passing the exam. Like I've had times where I just went days without talking to anyone because I was just so focused on studying because I wanted to like pass, and I was stressing out and I just was quiet. And I think I'm just making this connection now. When I was young, I didn't really talk much. I
Yeah.
had I had a very quiet but fat childhood because I was a fat piece of shit, and I was just eating chicken wings and noodles all the time. But other than that, I was pretty quiet. Like I had people were trying their best to talk to me, and I just didn't really want to talk because I was just observing people all the time. I was nearly mute, I guess. So when you see past the layers of who I aspire to be, and then you see who I truly am, I'm more of a very quiet, closed shell of a person. And I think that's where I default to when something like burnout happens. Like this is where I escape to. This is my shelter. This is where I run away to. Japan was great, but I had a lot of times where I had to escape, where I just wanted to be in my room and just don't want to talk to people. I call it hermit mode.
Yeah.
They want to talk to people.
Did you ever have any times where you didn't, like you yourself didn't really realize you were burnt out until like just something happened? Like for me, because when I was choosing my study abroad, I think I mentioned this before, I was choosing between like Tokyo and Otaru because like Otaru and Urikyo are both like good like business program schools. And I landed on Tokyo for like a few reasons, but one of them was because I wanted to like challenge myself more like in a city sort of environment because I was so like kind of socially like anxious. And I remember being like surprised at how well I thought I was handling things, like just being around like masses of people just all the freaking time. And then when for there was this like club join us at Rikyo where they like hung out with the international students and organized stuff for us to do. They organized the semester we were both there to go like over I forgot the name of the town, but it was over by like Mount Fuji, and we were gonna go camping for like a night or two.
Kawaguchiko, I think.
Yeah. I think that sounds right.
Yeah.
And I remember getting there, and that was my first time like leaving Tokyo since I had come. And I had to like go off for a minute, like by myself, because I just started crying, like from relief, like just being somewhere like quiet with a slow pace and like looking at like nature and like a lake and shit like that. Like I just went off and like cried for a minute. And I was like, I hadn't realized how tired I was until like that moment where I stepped like away from everything. And I was like, oh, why do I feel like this? And then I was like, oh, it's because you're tired. Like, and then I think that was the first time in Japan where I realized I needed to try to start making a little more time, like for myself to do some like slower paced things.
We barely had time for that, right? Like
Right.
Tokyo is extremely fast paced, for sure. Everything is so efficient and everything is available, but because it is, that meant that you pack a lot more throughout the day. And sure, we can never compare to like Japanese students and their expectations in society and all of that. But exchange students also have their own, shall we say, set of responsibilities, from part-time gigs that you get like for a job, or like a small thing, or the homework that you get, depending on what you're focusing on. Like for you, it was business specifically, and for me, it was just the language. So there's just a lot of studying and like memorizing and just hitting the books over and over and over again. And as much as you have a lot of time to actually travel and look around, say Tokyo at much, and maybe even like a one-night trip to somewhere else like Hakone or something like that. Sometimes there's just a lot to do, and sometimes you want a support system, but maybe the support system that we've had in our own home countries, like our family and our loved ones, etc. They're so far away, and then you put us in a dorm with other just as anxious foreign exchange students in a foreign environment, and then all of a sudden you have this massive factory of anxiety just happening. And for the both of us, like during our semester together, it was hard to share that kind of feeling with people, especially if you're a new student coming in for that semester. So it only took a while for any one of us to warm up to each other on like, are you doing okay, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. For me, it was for first semester, I didn't really warm up to anyone, maybe until like 2 months in, because that was when like, yeah, sure, we were partying and everything like that. But we became more comfortable with just doing just slower paced things in the dorm, just hanging out and talking, or just being at someone's room and then just chatting, etc. Not always trying to get ourselves completely smashed out and about in the city, but rather dwell in the comfort of like being in the being in like a room full of friends, etc. But to reach up to that point, you have to bear the burden alone of like, what are you dealing with, up until you reach that point with like friendship with other people. For me, that was kind of scary in itself. Like, I was intimidated by other students the first time that I came in, and I wasn't sure I was going to fit in, etc. So, but then that quickly faded away, which is fine. So that's why I put in a lot more energy behind being sociable, etc. Sometimes that can backfire.
Yeah, I feel it. My memory of it and how it actually was might be different. But in my memory of it, I feel like I kind of had a little bit of like the opposite experience. Like, we talked before about like the first day that I came in, and you were like one of the first people that was like, hi. And I was like, hey. But then after that, I had like, who took me? Yui, I think, took me to like my room, and they had like all the leftover stuff from the students who had left before I got there, and they were like, oh, take some things, so you don't have to buy them, like take it up to your room. And so they like took me to my room, and then they like leave you there, and I like sat down for a minute like, well, fuck, what do I do now? And like you're just there in this like random like four walls, like I know no one, I don't know where I am, like shit. And so I remember I was about to kind of start like freaking out, but I was like, no, I'm gonna go buy some shit and like put my room together. And I ended up running into Anna in the elevator. And she was like the first person that I kind of like properly met. And Anna is just like this beautiful spitfire of a girl from Spain. And she just like no like shame, just was like, I'm Anna, I'm kind of like weird and like out there, and like we're gonna go to this like little coffee shop and then like buy some stuff, do you want to come with us? And I take some time to kind of like process stuff, so when things are like thrown in my face like that, I don't even like know how to think about it. I'm just like, oh yeah, like sure, okay. and and so we went out and we went to like, I don't know the name of it, but that little like cafe over by Um, was it by the Combini? It might have been by the Combini. But we went and sat there, and I feel like there was other people with us, but I only remember Anna. Like, I feel like there was one or two other people there, but I only remember Anna. And she was just like chatting like away and just like expressing her like stress and stuff. And she's like, yeah, when I get nervous, I can't stop talking. And she's like going like 100 miles per hour, which made me feel comfortable. And I was, straight up, I was like, oh yeah, like I'm a kind of shy and quiet. Like I'm kind of worried about like making friends and stuff. And she was just like, oh, let's be friends then. And I was like, oh, okay. So I kind of like took my interaction with her as like my base of how I was going to be like meeting new people, where I was just going to be like, oh, like really open about myself, like, oh, I'm like kind of quiet, but like, I just want to like be friends with everyone. And I feel like that worked like kind of well for me. Like people are like, Holly's kind of fucking weird, but like I feel like no one, at least in the dorm, I can't speak for other dorms, but in our dorm I don't think anyone like hated me or anything. So it worked out. But there were people that I remember being scared to meet Saba because she was in Korea when I got there, I think. She was like visiting Korea.
Yeah.
And I like had heard you, and I feel like there was someone else that had like hung out with her. But people were always like, oh yeah, Saba's like so cool and like blah blah blah, she's crazy. And I was
Sid?
like, oh, like it might have been Sid.
Because it was the three of us in the beginning, and then I think Saba, if you're listening to this, can you like just DM us and be like, can you confirm this story? Anyway, I think it was the three of us that were hanging out. It was just the three of us by ourselves, and then the Japanese students. And then the new semester came in, because Sid, and also Sid, if you're listening to this episode, also confirm this for me, because I don't want to get it wrong. Because I think Sid just finished a gig teaching English in a different prefecture. So he stayed and continued staying in Japan, and then just moved to the dorm earlier than everyone else by the time the semester started. So yeah, it was the three of us. So I guess like when you started hearing about Saba, it was from me and Sid. And I mean, we're the boys. We're sort of like, we're gonna like ruin impressions of other people just because it's funny. So it might have been us.
No, you guys didn't ruin it. Like I just thought she sounded like the top bitch, basically. And I have a hard time, I feel, like establishing like good friendships with girls, because there's a lot of like information you have to be able to read. And I feel like in general, girls are kind of like more wary of each other. And so I was like, oh shit, like she sounds like cool. Like I want to be friends with her, but like, what if she hates me? And so before Saba like even came back to the dorm, I was like stressed about like meeting this person. And then when she got there and she's like, I'm Saba, and she's, her like fucking spunky self. And I just straight up with like my like dead ass, like, oh, I've been really scared to meet you. She's like, what? Why? And I was like, oh, everyone just makes you sound like really cool. And so I was like nervous that like, I don't know, you'd hate me or something. And she's like, no. And so I feel like when I met people, I was very like upfront, which I think, like now that I'm kind of thinking about it, there were a lot of like awkward things that like happened because of that. Like I remember someone like asking me to like hang out, and I was like, well, it's not a date, right? Like it was a guy. And I was like, well, it's not like a date, right? It's just like, we're just gonna like hang out. And he was like, yeah, like, we'll just go out.
Brush it off like a man.
And then I remember like going out with him, and we like went to have dinner and stuff. And he was like, it felt like a date. Like I haven't been on like many like proper like formal dates. Like usually when I meet people, it's just by like coincidental like hanging out. I'd never really go one-on-one. And it like felt like a date, and some of the stuff he was saying, and I was just like, but we're like friends, right? Like this isn't a date, right? And I just kept like kind of like saying that.
Yeah.
He's like, the fuck? And he like wanted to hang out more like afterwards. And I was like, no, like I have like homework to do. Uh, and so with that person, it was like awkward for like a little while, but then just by being around each other so much, like we became like pretty good friends. So there were like times like that. Like I feel like in most of my interactions with people, cat just broke into my room. It scared me.
Nice.
But yeah, I was pretty much just kind of like honest in like myself, like my awkward, weird self, and people for the most part. I don't know if they received it well, but they adapted to it well. They were like, "Oh, okay, like that's just Holly." And how I speak is very like to the point. And I ask questions that I feel socially aren't common when you're like first getting to know people because I don't know how to small talk. So I felt pretty open with people like right away. Like if we would go out drinking and stuff, and I would just be like, oh, like, how are you adapting to Japan? And so I feel like I was able to have those kinds of like conversations and connections pretty quick with people.
Yeah, I get worried about that actually by being that upfront with like deeper questions because those are questions I would love to get into. But you scare a lot of people using those questions sometimes. Like at least I've had a few personal experiences that way. And even more so maybe in a Japanese context, but like in general, I've had a few times where I've had like a friend introduce their friend to me and I'm just talking to them and like maybe just one small question. And then all of a sudden when we include them into like, you know, a group talk or whatever it is, it just happened to be a deep topic. I'd ask them directly, hey, what do you think? Like if I just say like, you know, what do you think about death? Or like, you know, what would you put on your gravestone or like your epitaph or something? And they'd be like, oh, mate, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like you can't really, that scares a lot of people off because people have different speeds in which they get into a comfortable position to share what's on their mind.
Yeah.
In Tokyo, I've noticed that a lot with international students as well as mixed Japanese people, and some Japanese students who are very open-minded. Because I've had this. I don't know if you've done this, but if you remember in McKim, which is the international building for Rikkyo University, best university in the world, by the way, in Tokyo, they have
You're even repping your sweater.
I know. I'm repping the Rikkyo University sweater, hoodie. Their old name, St. Paul's Uni. Amazing cathedral, by the way, or church. They have this thing where you can go into English conversations for like an hour. Like you apply as like a part-time conversationalist, and Japanese students can come in and talk English with you. And it was pretty fun to do because it's like something you get paid for it, and then it's like 1 hour or 2 hours a week, and you could talk with various people. That was the best time to test whether or not you can ask deep questions to Japanese students because it's like 50-50, like the result.
Yeah.
I've had a few like awkward moments, and I've had a few like, oh, there's someone who's actually for some like someone who was initially shy, and then I asked them like, you know, what do you think about this? And then they actually actively try to find the words to express it. So it's like great practice, and like they can actually be more comfortable, which is pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, that was, I think, the most difficult part for me about making like friends in Japan that were like born and raised there, because they like, even with people who seem like best friends, like a lot of times it almost seems like they don't really know like what that person is dealing with like internally, or what their like deeper thoughts on stuff is. Like I feel it's not that people don't want to, but they just don't really like talk about those things. They're very good at like internalizing that kind of stuff. And I am not like a surface level person. So when you get like me, who's like socially like awkward with like the Japanese friends who are a little more hesitant to kind of like talk and be open, it's like we don't know how to converse with each other. We're just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, the weather, it's nice. Yep, all right. But then some of my like favorite friends that I met were people who had studied at like other various places and then came back to Japan and had uh, a more broad like worldview and just like were so unabashed with like sharing their feelings about how they felt about their own country, things that they liked and disliked about, you know, their own society and stuff like that. Or there were some people in Join Us that were kind of like probably a more normal pace where you like make friends and get conversation. Like it's kind of like quiet and like simple at first, but then suddenly they open up and they start sharing more about themselves and you're like, oh wow, like you're a whole complex fucking person in there. Like, okay.
Which they are, right? It's just a matter of actually easing them into that mindset, like being able to
Yeah.
be in that position to be like, oh, you can talk about this, it's fine, I'm willing to
Yeah.
listen to
Yeah.
you, right? Like if you have an opinion on this, it's fine, like let me prompt you with it, and if you feel comfortable with how we're talking right now, it's perfectly okay. And I've had similar experiences for real, like similar to you, where the ones who are a little bit more worldly, I guess, in terms of
Mm-hmm.
what they pay attention to,
Mm-hmm.
they understand that there isn't really a necessity behind not sharing one's opinion. So
Yeah.
like it's fine to not hold back. Like
Mm-hmm.
when you've been in if you're in a culture where you have to hold back for harmony, it's
Mm-hmm.
quite liberating to have that feeling where you don't have to be silenced and it's actually perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
So when individuality is now revered in the conversation, that's when the deep questions can fly and you have all these like amazing answers. And then you realize just how complex people really are, right? Some
Yeah.
people can just be super shy, and what that means, it does not mean that they're not complex. It just means that their complexities under deep layers, and you just have to like
Mm-hmm.
pick through it. It took a while for me to understand this when in the beginning when I was making friends with a few Japanese students. And I don't want to generalize. This is just some
Yeah.
observations of a few people. This is not a generalization for sure. Like I don't want to be stereotypical here. Um,
Don't be
there's just
that
a
guy.
few. Yeah, I definitely won't. I'll be the last guy to be like that. It took a while for them to realize that I am sick of the small talk, and I'd be like, when we're talking, to expect those deeper questions. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a bit like provocation, right? Like it's like get on my level. Like we're gonna be talking about some deep shit, like philosophical
Yeah.
shit,
Yeah.
or observations on society and all that, or like, oh, if you've been to, if you did exchange in Spain, what was different about there and here? Like what would you like about there? What would you hate about here, etc. And it's perfectly fine. I'm willing to listen to you. The big one there is letting them know that I'm willing to listen to that locked up thought that they have. And I have a feeling that that in itself is a sign of stress for the average student.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just like, hey, shut up. You're not allowed to share your opinions.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
all the way until
Yeah.
uni. Yeah. So it's pretty fascinating to see that. Like it's fascinating to see someone come out of their shell and
Mm-hmm.
embrace individuality when they're talking to you. It's a really beautiful thing.
Did you, because I was just thinking about this while we were talking, have you had any, like, after you left Japan, were there any, like, connections with people that became, like, more solidified, like, after you left? Because, like, for me, I feel like I tried so hard to, like, make, like, girlfriends and be, like, more involved. but it's like you like I think a lot to do with that has to do with like the societal standards for women in Japan,
Mm.
where like coming from America and how I am and the people that I choose to hang out with, very like independent female and like hype up my like hose kind of attitude. And
Hype up
so when I
my
would
I would have used that.
um so like when I went to Japan and I was like, you'd have like times like in Japan, all the girls can like have a bath together and stuff. And I'm like, woo. And so you want to like talk with them like about like boys or girls or like whatever they're into and stuff like that, and people are like so like quiet about it and they seem like so like shy and stuff. But then since I left Japan, those same girls would like start to kind of like talk to me a little bit more, and maybe because I'm like pretty unabashed like on my social media, like I just say whatever I want and do whatever I want sort of thing. And so girls would start, like writing to me like more like openly, like how I wanted to talk to them like before, just like about their thoughts, about how they have to be more reserved and stuff like in society, but they want to be more like free with their opinion and stuff. Or I get so like what's the word that I want? Like honored. I get so honored because like Instagram has that like function where you can make like close friends and only certain people can like see what you post on your little stories.
Yeah.
And when girls put me on their stories where they're just like being hot and they start like posting stuff like in their underwear and like just vibing, like working out and stuff like that, I'm just like, oh, look at you. And then like hype them up, like, oh, girl, you're so hot. And then they're like, oh, thank you so much. I was so embarrassed. I'm like, no, don't be. So I feel like after I left Japan, I was actually a little like, I was able to kind of reach certain places that I couldn't in person. And I'm sure that's because there's, because even I get that way. Like, I feel like I can be more open, like through like texting or something like that, where I can kind of have a second to like think about like what I want to say and how I want to say it. And then you also don't have to worry about kind of reading like the other person's like facial reactions and stuff to like your comments and stuff. So maybe that has to do with it. But have you had like anything like you were able to feel closer with people like after you left?
No, not really. No. Um, I tried. Like, it's not like I
Mm,
didn't put any effort in there because I really missed it. Right, I really missed my
mm,
time there. So when I left in 2016, my body came to Australia, but my head was in Japan. Right.
yeah.
I think like I even wrote a lot of poetry on that. Like, this might like don't take me back. Like, I want to stay here, etc., etc., etc.
Mm,
So one of those things is just like messaging people and Facebook posts in Japanese and trying to keep up with dance crew and trying to keep up with people in the dorm. Um,
mm,
with the international students, it's a lot easier because we're kind of a very close group, like where we can just
mhm.
update no matter how many years or how many months have passed. It's okay.
Yeah.
But with the friends that I made in uni, and this is kind of tragic to say this, sometimes the
Mm,
connection I feel can be as fleeting as the length of time that I was there. Like
mm,
that it was at the peak during my time, like while my presence was there in Tokyo. And I understand it. Like, it makes sense. It's just that when you start to think about how can you continue this when you're far away, you run out of things to talk to, like to talk about,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much you can do behind hey, it's been so long since we talked. How have you been? What have you been doing? And it's like, oh, I've been working. Oh, I've been working too. And then that's it, right? And
Yeah.
yeah, you can get through deep questions, but sometimes, either we're too busy or the time zones or the salaryman life, and then everyone's just like too busy to talk, or they're studying, etc. And we're just not, like, for me, I feel I'm not relevant to their time in Japan anymore. So I'm not sure if there's anything for me to talk about. But then that might just be me full of presumptions. Like, I could just be like
Yeah.
completely presumptuous about this. That's happened for 2-3 years now, and then I barely talk to people there now. Maybe like the only times were when it's related to me actually going back there. If it's like a trip for like holidays or something, I'd be asking people like, just randomly a Facebook post. And you know me, I don't use my Facebook anymore. So
Yeah.
if I were to actually do a Facebook post, it's very rare. And it might be something about like, hey, I'm coming back to Tokyo. Who wants to meet up? And that's cool. That's all I want, right? All I want is just a few key people, and then that's pretty much it. Like, I was a very sociable and outgoing guy. I knew a lot of people, but in the end, the ones that I'm willing to continue the conversations with, even after I left, it whittled down, and it was just hard to keep that up. And I honestly feel a bit sad about that. But even then, the solution to that would just be like just saying, hey, I thought about you. How have you been? Right? Just to any one of your friends. And I'm pretty sure this works for any friend that you just lost contact with, or it's just been a long time. I just don't know what to talk about, to be honest. Like, what do I say? Like, hey, I've just been stuck in my room for the pandemic. How have you been? Like, so, mixed bag for me. It really is a mixed bag. I don't have hot girl vibes like you do, where you can share that with a. But
yeah. And I guess that is also probably a big difference in like our personalities. Like, as you were saying, you're a very like in person kind of like sociable like person, at least how you were like in Japan.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, I guess. Like and we like you like, now that I'm thinking about it, you don't really like interact much with like social media, like aside from the things that you do for work. Whereas like I do. That's my personal form of like expression. So it's easier for me to kind of like see other people or them see like what I'm doing. And I think it probably creates more room to like respond to stuff and kind of keep a bit of that connection. Because for me, after I form like an actual connection with someone, I'm very like simple about it. Like, there are people who think like you need to like talk all the time or about like super meaningful things. After someone already becomes like an important person, like in my life, years can go by, and then like once a year they could send me like a picture of like a fucking flower or something, and I'm like, I love you so much, oh my god, like I hope you're well. For the most part, that's how I am about those things, I guess. And so when anyone puts in, or maybe I'm just maybe it's just a sad thing about my like psychology of my brain, where just it takes so little to make me happy. Other people just give me any bit of attention and I'm like, wow, they like me. I don't know. I'm not gonna think too much about it.
No,
But
I feel the same way as well. Like, if someone were to message me out of nowhere and be like, picture of a flower, hey, thinking of you, hope you're doing well, I'd be like, oh, that warms my heart. Like, who would hate that? Like, who would look at that and look at it from a negative point of view? Who would be like, bitch, that's a shitty flower, should have given me like a hydrangea or something like that, or a sunflower, bro. I I mean, I would love that. Like, and I think maybe that's it. Like, I think it's more of, I think the what is lying beneath this thought of mine is that I have the desire to continue the connection with people. And maybe for some reason, the only format I've been thinking about it is through a conversation, because that's how I've been doing that all the time. That's how I've been cultivating that connection with them, is in-person talks and chats and dumb shit that I've done with them, whatever. while I was there in Tokyo. And there's only so much you can do when I'm far away and I'm busy with my own stuff here, and then everyone's living their life over there. Is it okay for me to just say hi? Or like, is it okay for me to just say a random picture and be like, hello? Or something else? I guess it is that. I might just be thinking too much about it. Like I might just be freaking out over nothing. Because in the end, they're all friends.
Yeah. And I think that's something that's kind of sad about like people in general. Because I'll get like that. Like, one of my friends, she studied um at my home university the year before I went to Japan. And while she was here, we hung out like quite a bit. And then when I was in Japan, we met up like a couple times. And then, now she like works and doesn't, we don't really keep in touch, but from time to time, oops, dropped my earbud. Um, from time to time, we'll be like, hey, how are you, or something. And it was during like kind of like the peak of COVID stuff. And I hadn't talked to her in quite some time. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to reach out. It's like, hey, I was thinking of you and just wanted to let you know. And like, I hope you're doing okay. And, she responded, and usually she's not so like forthright about stuff, but she was like, oh, I'm really glad that you wrote me. Like, actually, I've been really depressed lately, with like the pandemic and work and like blah, blah, blah. And so I think about stuff like that. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's a universal thing where as we get older, we start to kind of be like, oh, everyone's busy. Like they're not going to have time to like talk to me, or like, what am I even going to tell them about my life? Because we get very like self-critical, I feel like, as we get older about like what we're doing. Like for me, I'm like, oh, if someone asked how I am, like, what do I even say? Like, I don't fucking know. I'm just drifting in the wind trying to figure shit out. And I don't think I ever will. And I'm like, I don't want to have those conversations with people and feel like a loser. So it's easy to kind of like not reach out. But I think all of us, if you form a connection with someone, I think there's always like that piece of it still in there. I think people are always like grateful to like hear from one another, as long as there's, like no bad blood or something.
I mean, I don't think you'd want to reach out to someone you have bad blood with, right? Like it's, hey, thinking of you, fuck you, go die, or like whatever. It's the, I guess the intention could be felt in the reaching out part of it. It doesn't have to be a conversation. It will be like, it's like, I think the physical version of it would be sending a postcard and just saying, thinking of you, or like, it'll just be like, and I miss that actually. I wish I could write postcards to people, where you just be like, hey, I'm thinking of you. I send this to you. I'm doing this. I hope you're doing well. I hope you enjoyed the picture. And then that's it. And just send the postcard. I guess it's just that, like a more asynchronous version, as opposed to the expectation behind reaching someone on Messenger, etc., and then expecting like a whole full thing happening.
Yeah.
Whereas you have, just a simple thinking of you message could help. And I guess the distance can make it pretty sad, or what's the word for it? There's an element of melancholy in there where you know that there was something beautiful in the connection, but it's just
never
so
gonna be the
hard to
same.
keep it up. Yeah.
Those are sad. That's like the stuff that I have to like try not to think about. I used to be really, really bad about it. Like, just always kind of stuck in like a sense of nostalgia for the things that were, and like how my relationships were with like certain people, like for a long time, like in and out of Japan. And even occasionally now, like when I'm kind of like lost in my thoughts, I'm just like, damn, like I just want to go back to that time. But I don't know. There's also a sense and a beautiful thing about like time going on and changing. Like I don't know if it's like this for many people. Like, I can only like talk for myself, but it's like when I meet people and I form like a some sort of connection with them, like no matter how small it might seem like on the surface, if an interaction that I've had with a person has touched me in a certain way and makes me grow or expand my thought and stuff like that, they kind of become like a part of me. And so when now, like when I'm thinking about people and I'm finding myself kind of getting into like that sort of like melancholy, I often find myself switching into thinking of like how cool is it that like I got to meet this person and they are now like representative of like this certain part of me and how I act and like how I think. Like those people, I don't know. It's just like they're with you forever. Like regardless of what the interactions that you have with them like now and into the future are. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think of it the same way as well. Like I carry with me all the conversations I've had with people. So no matter the depth of the connection or the relationship, etc., if they add to my life, then I carry them in memory, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's how someone becomes immortal, is if anyone can remember them. When at least that's how I
Mm-hmm.
view it. To me, when I think of connections with people and they become imprinted in someone's life, it honestly should not be a detriment to the relationship itself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by this is from the perspective of time, because if time and distance, rather, actually, distance is actually the more powerful factor here. If distance, I'm burping from the freaking side. I'm sorry. If distance, so listeners, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry for the burping. Anyway, um, distance then becomes a factor in recognizing whether or not it takes more energy to keep up a relationship or a connection with someone. If there's a greater distance, and sometimes it's temporal, right? Like if there's like years of not talking to someone, that's in itself a form of distance. So yes, there may be more energy in keeping that up, but that's sort of the beauty of it, when you have people who are willing to keep that up, even if it's just a simple like message, like simple like thinking of you message. um
Mm-hmm.
and without time, there's no beauty, because there won't be a closed loop of something. Because if
Mm-hmm.
everything can last forever, and if there's no such thing as time, then you wouldn't be able to, you don't have to put any energy into continuing a connection, so there isn't any effort in actually continuing one. So as much as it is sort of a vice or sort of a pain to have friendships in a context where we go in and we go out a year later, that beginning and ending, that time period, that chapter, actually amplifies how precious that time is, because it was
Mm-hmm.
only because you could actually go into the context that you're like, wow, I had this amazing talk with this amazing person and we're still friends even after. Or even though I talked with this person for like 5 minutes, they added to my life. I'm still going to, maybe I'm not talking to them anymore, but I'm still going to remember them because of that talk. Like it's worth it. It's
Mm-hmm.
worth keeping their memory in our brains. I guess maybe when I'm thinking about, oh, I'm not keeping up with my friendships overseas,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's heavily related to how I view social media. Like you said, I don't really go on social media much anymore, except for work related stuff. Actually, on Twitter, like I've messed around a lot on Twitter, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where I've been parking myself more. On Facebook, that's where I was most active until I just don't like Facebook that much. I felt like I was going into Facebook so that I can keep up with things. It
Yeah.
wasn't. It was like my it was like my CNN. Like I was there just to keep up with the
Yeah.
news of my friends. I wasn't really there for my own well-being. So I'd rather go to Messenger more than like the Facebook app. I don't even have the Facebook app on me.
Mm.
And with that being said, I start to care more about those one-time connections, those one-time catch-ups, those one-time things where you could just like message someone and then that's it, right? It's more like a checkpoint. It's like, hey, I'm letting you know I still cherish our friendship, but here's the message. You're not obligated to reply. I'm just letting you know I'm thinking of you. I hope you're doing
Yeah.
well. Boom. But you know, I don't want to get swept up by social media and keeping up with everybody. Like I don't want to keep up with the Kardashians all the time because
No.
it's a lot of stuff happening and I have my own stuff to deal with. So I love you, my
Yeah.
friends, but nah, it's okay.
Yeah, and plus like social media in itself is a whole other fucking form of burnout. Like
Yeah.
I remember like kind of the same, like specifically after I came back to the States from Japan. Like I wanted to constantly be seeing like what everyone else was doing. And it just made me feel worse. Like, because I couldn't be with them. Like I was where I didn't want to be. And it's like the more I was preoccupied, like with what other people were doing, the like worse I would feel. And even now, like if I catch myself like flipping through like social media too often, like I can physically feel that like it exhausts me. And that's just one of those things in life. Like, you know, you always have to be finding balance for stuff. So it's like now if I use these things, I just do it like with like whoever happens to like be on my mind like that particular day. God, what's so and so like up to? Versus like trying to take the time to catch up on like everything. Or even like with the news and stuff like that. And I don't know. I feel like people listen to this and they'll be like, what a privileged thing to say. But like sometimes like you just have to fucking turn it off. Like when everything with the pandemic and stuff was happening, like it's confusing and all this stuff is happening and it's like I was trying so hard to be aware of like, okay, what's happening in my state, what's happening in my country, what's happening in the countries that my friends are in, and like trying to talk to people like, hey, are you okay? And after like a couple months of that, like I was just completely like destroyed as like a person. Like it's just so much information all of the time. And like sometimes you just have to turn all of that off and be like, okay, what am I going to do for me today? And like, what do I want for myself today? And sometimes that stuff takes practice.
Yeah, what do I want for myself today is a question I keep trying to answer, and I just don't have the answers for it because 9 times out of 10, I'm like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and then I get overwhelmed with desires. And then on the
Yeah.
other hand, my answers don't reflect my actions. So like, I'll be like, oh,
Oh,
I want
yeah.
to,
Yeah.
yeah, I want to, treat myself better today. And the next thing you know, I'm scrolling on Facebook, like, what's the people doing over there in Tokyo or something like that.
Yep. Yep.
I'll be very honest here. Uh, and I don't think I've ever said this to anyone or not even to yourself. Uh, I left in 2016 and I went to Australia. And like I said, my mind was in Japan. To be honest, when I was seeing pictures of you having fun with the new batch in Rikyo, I was actually very, very jealous because I I knew how great spring semester in Rikyo is. And
Mm.
the feeling of being able to help out the new students who've coming in, the feeling of staying in to another semester now that you're more used to the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like your first semester, it's like your test run, and then your second semester is like when stuff actually gets really fun. It's I mean, not that I'm being comparative here, but rather you know yourself better in this environment by that time. So you know how to carry yourself better to a certain degree. So when I saw your pictures, I'm like, wow, there's this new faces in the same rooms that I was in for like a year. And there's like another student that has my room. I'm like, oh, that's where I did this, or that's where I left the empty champagne bottle where I try to pop it and there's nothing there. Like that's where I put that. Or oh, this person's room is the same as this other room that we would put the cone in, and that's where the party stuff is happening. Or all the, you know, where all the Asakare people are gathering together and taking pictures, and they're all doing the same, like everyone's in the same room, big ass selfie picture happening together. That's what we used to do, etc. So when I saw your pictures, I started being very comparative. It was actually very unhealthy, because as much as I was very happy that the new Rikyo students were coming in and they were really enjoying it, and I was very proud because I was, you know, genuinely very proud to be a Rikyo student, and specifically an Asakadai dorm, you know, tenant as well. I still wanted more of that. So when I saw your pictures, I was like, I really want to be there right now. And I started to look at the environment around me with contempt, which is pretty sad because I was in Sydney already for like 4 or 5 years by then. And I had one more, and I have friends there, you know? And I had one more semester to finish. It's a beautiful uni and everything. Shout outs to UNSW, black and yellow, baby. So it's a beautiful place, but my mind is always just distracted. This doesn't like, why isn't there cherry blossoms in this uni? Like, where's all the Asadora in the family mart and near the uni? Or like, why am I hearing Australia instead of Nihongo, right? Like it's, you know, there's the, I missed the ambience or the air that you can only find there. So my mind was in two parts, and I was pretty sad about that, to be honest. Like I was so sad or devastated from leaving that I'd never had that actually from all the times that I've moved to places, but I was so sad from that happening that I felt in the last semester of me in Australia, I just wanted to finish that semester and then try to find a way to get back there, because I just had this like fever trying to get back there and retrieve the memories I was supposed to get, because I was being very comparative with the semester at that time.
Yeah, and that's another like unhealthy thing, as you were saying, like, because for the most part, especially if it's like Facebook and stuff, I don't really do too much with it. And I think at the time of Japan, it was like I saved my like deeper feelings for like I was blogging a lot.
Yeah.
And then Facebook, I would like post some like photos and stuff like that. But I'm really bad with change. And so when you guys started leaving from my first semester, I had the hardest time like processing that. Like you, Saba, Esper, fucking Eric and stuff, like as you guys were leaving, I entered like, and I was already kind of depressed because I had lost a friend back home. And so I got very like existential about connections with people. Like, oh, it's so fleeting, you know? And that was hard for me to adjust to. I think like the weekend, I don't know, not too long like after you had left and like Sab and everyone had left, we were like drinking in the dorm, and Micah had come over, and some of the people from Join Us had like come to the dorm, and so a bunch of people were like sleeping in my room. And I was just like drunk and sad and like talking to Micah, and I was like, I miss my friends. And so we were going around to like people's rooms and just like seeing their like empty rooms. And then Micah and I just ended up passing out like on your, like you didn't even have like a futon in there anymore. We just like slept on the boards in like your old room. Like woke up in the morning like, fuck, where are we? Oh my God. And I think I had told you like I had like taken your like name, little name plaque, and I just like put it on mine, and I was like, oh, Norman can be here for like second semester too. And
I remember that.
like I got very, because even when the new people came in, I had this feeling, because it was Sid and I then, and we were trying to decide, we're like, well, shit, like, we should be the fun people and like welcome everyone and take them out. And, you know, we want them to have a good time and we want to carry on like the crazy, like Asakadai energy. But both of us were, you know, we're like sad. Like, we're like, we want our friends. Like, we don't want these like new people to come.
Yeah.
And so I think like in face, you know, you know, entertained everyone and stuff, but inside I was very like torn up about like making new friends, because I was like, what's the point? Like, we're all gonna leave again and none of it matters. And that's why like it was such like a need for me when I was like, Norman, I'm gonna come to Australia and visit, because like I just had to get out of Japan for a minute and like recollect like my thoughts. And then like I got to go hang out with you and like see Australia, and then I was like fixed my perspective where it's like, okay, it's not so bad as like everyone leaves and like all the shit is meaningless. It's more like, look at the opportunities that I have now and with the like the people that I get to meet, and I get to know all these like cool people all over the world. Because when I came to Japan, I didn't have the expectation that I was going to meet people that affected me so much. Um, I just I was still kind of learning about like friendship, I guess, and what that meant to me. And so I didn't expect that I was going to meet people that I felt so strongly for and that really shaped my time like in Japan. And so when I came back to Japan after visiting, I was more like, okay, it's not these other people's fault that like my friends had to leave, and like I should get to know them as like who they are, and like, you know, not compare like first semester and second semester, although first semester was better like in my opinion. But I don't know, that
I
stuff,
mean,
all that stuff is so weird.
they didn't kick us out or anything.
Yeah, right,
Like
right.
those same feelings, like when you're thinking about, carrying on that energy despite the sadness of it, was exactly what me and Saba felt
Mm-hmm.
from first and second semester. And I've never told anyone this, but um, when the only other person I've talked to about this is Josh. So shout outs to Team Smash for this from first semester, the boys of my first semester. So spring 2015. Um, and only me and him would know about this. So I went to uh, I went to a trip, just backpacking to um, Osaka, Hiroshima, and Okinawa. And halfway through, I met up with Josh, uh, our lovely half Dutch, half British guy. So we'd be, on travels together, and we're just on backpacks, and we're just like running around and doing whatever, and living on the summer islands and stuff. But I remember we had this exact conversation. We had this talk when we were on our way back, and I think this was in Okinawa. And Josh, if you're listening to this, you just confirm with me. I forgot when it was, where it was we were walking back from, but I remember it was just the two of us. And Josh only stayed for that semester. So I was going to stay on, and we drank for a little bit. And then we were on our way back to our hostel or the trip that we were staying. And I asked him, like, what are you going to do after? Right. Like, I think, what are we going to do after the semester's done? And he's like, oh, I'm going to do this, whatever, whatever, whatever. And I'm like, and he's asked me, like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't have an answer to that question. It's like, I don't know, because everyone's going to leave. And, and he's like, oh, Saba's staying, or like a couple other people are staying, so you're not going to be alone. And I'm like, I know, but it's not going to be the same anymore, because a lot of people are leaving. And then I think my heart just burst open during that time, because
Yeah.
I ended up naming all the students that were in the dorm that were going to leave, like 20 names all in one go of like everyone that's going. And then I just cried. While we were just walking back home. And he was just like, and then I just made it very awkward for him, I guess. So I'm really sorry, Josh. But he just like patted me on the back, and then we're just walking back home, and I was just crying, and I was saying everyone's names, and I was gonna say like I missed him so much, etc. Because I didn't want to confront the fact that that semester was going to end. Like there was going to be closure, and I didn't want to face that reality.
It's such like a painful, because it's not like everyone just leaves. Like you wake up one morning and everyone like goes. It's like one by one, like people start leaving. And it's just like picking the scab off of a wound, like over and over and over again. And I remember just by like the end of it, like I didn't even know how, like, I don't know. It almost feels like I like can't take anymore. Like I can't take any more of this. It's just like, because I'm such like, you know, an emotional person. And then you almost feel a bit selfish because like these people are going to, you know, they're going back to their lives and they have like their own things that they're like worried about and stuff. But all you can do is just be like, oh, I don't want you to go. And I think actually like Jesper was one of the hardest people for me to like say bye to, because he was just so like, you know, like he's just like cheery and stuff. So I remember just like saying bye to him, like, and he's like, oh, you're gonna be fine, like blah blah blah. And I was like, oh my god, no. And then like Saba, and she's just like, you know, we're gonna see each other again, like blah blah blah. And you're just like, are we though? Like, oh my god, because you don't know, like you just don't know in those moments, like with these people that you've become like family with, and then suddenly there's this uncertainty of like, what did this time mean together, and then like what is it now, like going forward. But then like look at us, like you and I, what's it been, like 6 years, and now we're like making a podcast, and then I get to go visit Saba in like a month. You're like, that's cool. Like
yeah, it is. Yeah. This is 6 years. Oh fuck, I keep forgetting it's 6 years. It doesn't feel like.
No, it doesn't. It feels like a couple months ago.
Yeah. The more that we're talking about it, it's just this golden age thinking that's just like making us feel this way. Major Midnight in Paris vibes.
I'm gonna be like 90, like, oh yeah, my time in Tokyo.
remember 2015? It's like the year 3000. Like, remember 2015? Yeah.
Before the great pandemic, things were golden.
And the pre-COVID era. Yeah, to be honest, like I cried a lot for like silently. I didn't really tell people about this.
Yeah,
I cried a lot away, like in my own room, for a lot of people that left for first semester and second semester, especially the guys, because it was just so fun and just great to be with them. I would be like, yeah, man, I'll see you when I can. Like I'll visit you in the US or in Europe, etc. And then when when they leave, and my room's not far from the lobby. Like we all of us say our goodbyes at the lobby, and I just be like, so I'm not that far away from people to just knock on my door and be like, hey, this person's leaving, right? It's this person's last day. So I'm at the mercy of people who's going to give their last goodbyes because I'm just a knock away. And it was just tears after tears after tears. Not that they're going to be gone and away forever. It's just that, and I have a theory about this, is we cry not for what we have lost, but rather that we have now been denied the opportunity to make more memories with the person, which fits with like someone passing away or someone that's going to be far, far away in another country or the other side of the world. I mean, I would cry a lot for that. Like I can't make the same shit or do the same stuff with Team Smash or the 1050 because all the boys are like all around the world. They're doing their own things and they're busy, right? They have commitments, etc. So I've now been denied the opportunity to make more memories in that context because now that context is lost. And I'm crying for that.
Yeah.
And to have that 20 times per semester because people are
Yeah.
leaving is painful. So
It is so painful. Ah.
Yeah.
And then like I don't know if they like take the photos like every time someone leaves and you just see like the circle like getting smaller and smaller. And then you're just like, all right. And then you feel that again like when it's your turn to leave. And then you feel the pain of like what your friends were probably feeling and like all the like your own personal like uncertainties and things like that of going back to your like country.
Yeah. Wait,
Oh,
yeah, I
that was
have a
shitty.
question. I have a question about that actually. So
Mm,
you did 2 semesters.
mm-hmm.
How did you feel about meeting people back home after you're in Japan? Did you feel that you're going to have a disconnect, or did you feel that you're going to go back to your loved ones and friends, but you're still going to feel alone? Like, I'm really curious about that now.
Again, like I'm sorry to anyone who's known me my whole life that may listen to this, but the way that I grew up and the way that I had been living in my head up to about 2014, um, I was very cut off from people. And again, this probably just has to be like a lot to do with me being like autistic and then also growing up the way that I did. I did not necessarily value human relationships. Um, it was something that I didn't really understand at all. I didn't really have like a concept of what family was and what like precious people to me were because I'd spent a lot of time like building up those walls and not trusting other people. So when I was coming back to America, I didn't really feel like I was coming back to anything. Um,
Hmm.
when I went to Japan, it felt completely amazing to be away from everything. That when I had to go back, it was very distressing to me. Um, because I wasn't returning to anything. There were people that I had met before I moved to Japan that were all living in Japan. And then my friends that I had in the States, they all studied abroad when I studied abroad. Um, so we were all, when we came back, we got like an apartment together and stuff. And so I didn't necessarily think too much about the outside because I don't know. It's because when I first came back, I went back to my, like hometown for I think about 2 weeks before I got to move into my apartment at my like university. And my relationship with my family at the time was very kind of like superficial, like just very like on the surface. So when it's like, oh, how is Japan? Um, I didn't think like they really cared. Like I just thought it was like a formality kind of question. So I was just like, oh yeah, it's good. And then I would see like some of my friends from high school, and it's kind of like the same thing. Like, oh, how is Japan? Oh, it was good. Like I had fun.
It was
Like
fine.
they're all yeah, like they're all
It was
getting
okay.
married and having yeah, they're all getting married and having kids and stuff, which is so far from the life that I live. And I didn't like know how to connect with people really once I came back. And then like I got very um I don't know if like people on podcasts need like trigger warnings and stuff, but like I got very like suicidal when I came back. Like I moved into the apartment and it was nice to be living with people that had just gone through the same thing and we were kind of all going through like the same feelings of like adjusting to like being back.
Yeah.
But I had no desire to like do anything. Like, I was like trying to get a job, um, just like a normal university type thing. And then it was my gonna be my last semester of university. And like I've dealt with like suicidal like ideation like my whole life, but I remember I had just like moved back. I'd been in like the uni city for like a couple weeks. School hadn't started or anything yet. And I actually like sat down and like wrote like like a suicide note. And I was like, I'm like I have done what I wanted to do in my life. Like going to Japan was like my one like goal and like I've done that. And so I felt like I was so calm about this. Um I was just like, yeah, I've done like what I wanted to do. It was like very matter of fact. And I was like, so there's no point like moving forward really. Like I love what I got to experience and like now I'm done. And then I was like, oh shit. I should probably call someone and like talk about this. And so like I called my mom and I was like, I don't want to freak you out. And I was like, and I'm not like in a like crazed state or anything. I was like, but I'm just, I feel like I had a good life, Like I feel good. She's like, Holly, you know, give it some time. Like, how about you try to sleep on it and then we'll talk tomorrow and like see how you feel. And I was like, oh, okay. And then, she called me the next day and she's like, you alive? How you doing? And I was like, oh yeah, like I get what you're trying to say. Like I can still kind of create like new goals and things like that. And at the time, it was kind of like the same as you, where my only driving factor was like, I'll go back to Japan. Like, and that's kind of like what kept me motivated and kept me working. Um, but I was a mess, like after I came back. Like I aside from like the people that I lived with, I didn't really care about like anyone else. Um, it was kind of just like people to pass the time with. And then there were times like Jonah came to visit, um, and things like that. And those were the only times where I felt like good, I guess. Like that whole year, like 2016, 2017, like just kind of like hazy. Like I didn't know what I was doing. And you're trying to also adjust. Like I feel like that's how it was for a lot of us. We were going back in a time where we were finishing university and you're immediately trying to figure out like you're coping from your feelings of like studying abroad and then suddenly you're like, oh shit, you're entering this like world of adulthood or whatever that you just have no idea like what to do with it. And then I feel like I've kind of been in that place since then. Like it just but emotionally more mature about it, I guess. It can emotionally handle it a bit better than I could at the time.
Yeah, the ability to regulate that feeling
Yeah.
took a
Yeah.
while. Took a while.
Yeah.
I I know that feeling very, very well. Like 2016, it was also quite hazy for me because the first half of the year was just me wanting to finish uni. Like I just want to be done with that because I wanted to find a job like ASAP.
Right.
I think I remember asking like Sid or Timo, shout out to both of them, about work or entrepreneurship or something online, just to see like, are you guys thinking about jobs and stuff like that? And it's a bit unfair for Sid because he still has another semester, so maybe there's still more time to think about it. But for Timo specifically, because he had to go back to Finland after it was just one semester during that time, and then he used to finish uni there as well, and then start working. So he was already starting to think about work, etc. Because I think we've started having those kinds of conversations near the end of the semester. So it just got me thinking, like, in what way can I differentiate myself to try and find a place back here again? When I meant by here, I mean Tokyo. Yeah. And it was, making the most of what I learned studying Japanese, what I knew about the world or what I studied, etc. And even my family was very supportive of it, actually, because my parents are very, very encouraging in saying something like, hey, why don't you find a job in Japan as much as you can? Like, why don't you try and do something about that? And I tried. And I couldn't get something.
Yeah.
And I think I had to ended up staying in Malaysia. And I don't know if that was a good thing or a bad thing, but that's how it's happened. And
Yeah.
and at first I was like, I guess it's okay because I can still just go back to Japan anytime. But then from another standpoint, it felt like a goal that I could never attain. So the more that I think about like trying to find a place to go back there, the first thing that came about was trying to find a job in Japan. The harder it was, and I just couldn't find anything. So I just had to default to staying in KL. So, you know, it was like a year of bliss, and then 2016 was just desperation, to be honest. If I were to put that like a word, it was desperation, because I was a little bit lost as to what to do. I was doing all kinds of things. The one regret that I have was I wished I wrote more in Japan.
Yeah. Me
I wish
too.
I wrote way more. I didn't really write that much, to be honest. I feel like I didn't, because I barely touched my laptop. I didn't really need to do it for much, like just some schoolwork here and there, but I never really wrote for myself. Like I wish I bought like one of those like small note-taking devices that the Japanese people have. Like they flip open, there's a keyboard, and it's like this very, very minimal writing device. Oh man, I wish I had that, because I would totally write so much in all of those things.
I wonder if I have to go through my things next time I visit my grandparents. But I had like a couple notebooks that I would carry around with me always to be like writing.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure all my blogs and stuff from that time are still up. I could always go like revisit. But I don't know. Even then, it's like words can't describe even like the feelings and the experiences. And then I don't know, it's weird. Like like how you were just kind of like explaining how things have been since you come back. Like I say this very neutrally, like for as like shitty as it sounds, but I feel like since I came back to America, it's just been like failure after failure. And I was really hard on myself at that, like about that, like at first, because like as you're saying, like I was doing the same thing where it was like I was trying to get these jobs in Japan, and for me it freaking sucked because it's like I was getting a lot of interviews and stuff at the time, and then I would get some job offers, but I couldn't afford to like relocate, and the places didn't like help do that. And then like not only like with Japan, like I was looking into places like off on the like West Coast and like Oregon and like California and stuff. And so at first I was feeling like good, like, oh, cool, I can like get a job after college. And then I was hit with this like sudden realization of like, oh, you have to have money to like even get started like in life. And so I couldn't accept any jobs because I couldn't afford to like get myself started in another place. And then I think I let that like get to me pretty hard, and I kind of gave up for like a little while and just started like working as a barista and like what the hell do I do? And then since then, like I guess like you kind of just get used to it. Like this is probably a very like adult thing. Like I'm sure it's this way for everyone. Where you're just trying like random shit and you hope that like something like falls into place. Like that's pretty much like how I live my life now, where I'm just like I'll see like a possible opportunity and I'm like, ah, dip a toe in there, and then either like shit like hits the fan or it goes like fairly well and you just kind of like coast with it. And it's almost, I don't know, it's very mixed. Like on one end I feel kind of like peaceful about being neutral about that, but it's also like kind of sad, like just to kind of feel like this, it's almost like defeat to me to have this acceptance of like, ah, this is just how life is. But I don't know. I'm not in the same place that I was before where I felt like there was like this one ultimate thing that I had to achieve. Like, I don't have that anymore. And I don't know. Maybe that's why I feel so burnt out all the time. Is because it's like you're always kind of in the back of your mind, like, oh, what do I do next? What do I do now? Like, what should I be doing? Like, sort of thing.
Maybe that's why we feel burnout all the time. Just it's like we're expected to have those answers,
Yeah.
right? Like we
Yeah.
we are meant to have something to aspire to, or we keep comparing ourselves with like an ideal version where they've already achieved all this shit, and we're like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, like if you tried, you would have gotten all this money and you would have gone back to Japan or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Why are you not doing that now? And then you just feel shit about it. Or at least for me, at
Yeah.
least. This is just me like talking out loud.
No, no, I get it.
And what I'm meant to do, what I want to do, what I desire, etc., are big questions that take a lot of energy. Just not even answering it, just thinking about the question, right? It's
Mhm.
like even planning how to answer that. Because
Yeah.
if you ask someone like, hey, what do you aspire to be? Some people have very clear cut answers. And otherwise, like other people, they might have not even answers, just thinking out loud. Things like, I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about this, I dream of this happening, I dream of that happening. Very vague,
Mhm.
and it's not really clear because it sometimes answering questions like those, it's like throwing darts. You don't know if you're going to hit the bullseye,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
like something far left. And you're like, shit, I need to get a better score. So for me, I guess in response to the desperation after coming back, when I found a job, I was exploring a lot of things on the side while working. So
Mm.
that got me to where I was, which helped, but I still feel a bit lost. So I think that's more on not on what I want to do, what I want to work on, but rather who I want to be is actually the scarier question for me right now. And
Yeah.
that may be the source of my burnout for like the week and even this
Mm.
year, to be honest, like even the past 2 or 3
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
And not to end it on a very solemn note, but I guess we're facing our own burnout, like our own definition of burnout,
Mm.
for the both of us, and with everyone listening to this episode as well. In all genuine honesty, find your support system. It's like
Right.
so important, right? Like technically, technically, even before starting the show, you and I have been talking about things like this for so long. Like
Right.
some calls have been going for like 3 to 4 hours talking about all kinds of shit. And
Yeah.
and sometimes it's, it also includes deep questions like this, because for me, this feels like a form of conversational therapy. So
Mhm.
in any case, as much as we didn't really touch on many things Japanese here, although we did, I hope that everyone listening to this is reassured that as much as we are hosts of this podcast, we are also going through our own things, and we are happy to talk about it. Like we are happy
Yeah.
to talk about these struggles, because a lot of struggles you shouldn't be handling it alone, because there's no way I
Mhm.
could have handled all this alone. And
Yeah.
I like have many loved ones and friends to thank for that, and Holly, that
Mhm.
includes you as well. So it's a big thing, no matter where you are, whether in Japan or anywhere else.
Mhm. And you'd be surprised, like, how many people are feeling the same things that you are, like, whether they seem from a, societal expectation successful or not. Like, we're all just human. Like, we're all going through it, just doing our best. And I think, like, a pet peeve of mine when I first started kind of working on my mental health was people would always be like, "Oh, it could be worse," or, "Oh, like, everyone feels the way that you do." but you're
Oh
just
God.
hearing that as like a surface level thing. I think it's important, for people to kind of share their experiences and to hear, what other people are actually going through because we're all quite, so similar in the things that we're dealing with, even if the shape of the experience is different. The feelings are pretty similar. I love to talk about that shit. So,
Dwelling in the darkness.
yeah. Join me in the void.
Let's be sad together. Yeah, like actually on that note, when you're sharing when you're opening your heart out, like this is genuine suggestion for everyone here. When you're opening your heart out and the only response you hear is like, oh, you get through this. Oh, everybody feels this way. No, it's a natural automatic response, but
Mm,
I look at it as a standard template answer because they don't know what to say.
yeah.
And if they don't know what to say, my genuine suggestion is to find people who know what to say.
Hmm.
And I'm not sure what would be the best response for anyone's circumstance, but for me, the ones who do are the ones who make me feel like I'm being listened to. They don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to have the answers, but it's simple prompts like, can you tell me what you've been going through? How do you feel about
Hmm.
this? What are you going to do about this? What would you need with help with? Right? Like, do you think this would help you, etc. Like even just
Hmm.
small questions here and there,
Hmm.
because the point of opening your heart out to someone is that you you are given the chance to reorganize the chaos in your mind
Hmm.
into thoughts that actually help you, not pull you down. And
Hmm.
sometimes you need someone from outside the box to be like, hey, you're thinking about this. You should be thinking about this a different way, right? Like, don't think about the
Yeah.
negative part of it all the time. But here's a prompt to like help you out, things like that.
Yeah.
And from something like
Yeah.
burnout, like maybe not too much of a deep issue, but like even from something like burnout and exhaustion, sometimes just chatting with a good friend who can actually pull those thoughts from you and be like, think about it a different way can actually help you out. And that can actually be the solution to you burning out.
Yeah.
Because throughout this talk, I feel a lot lighter because
Yeah.
I get to actually talk about burnout. Like,
Yeah. And sometimes that's all you need. Like I find like in therapy or when I'm like venting with my friends, when you actually say something like when you're articulating your thoughts out loud, oftentimes you end up finding solutions to your own problems. Um like sometimes I'll be venting about something that's bothering me and then suddenly I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that's what I should do about that." Or it's like as you said, sometimes just literally talking about it, like not everything has a solution. And sometimes just expressing that frustration helps,
yeah,
so much.
yeah. So know that you're not alone. Like,
Mm.
we I don't want to say it. I don't want to leave it as we're all going through the same few things because I don't want to downplay everyone's experiences. But know that the feelings or the emotions that you are receiving right now um, can be shared, so you don't have to bear the burden on your own. At least that's a very good
Mhm.
foundation to start off with.
Mhm.
And the first step is bravery, and then the next step is progress. So
Mhm.
just take one step at a time, and hopefully you'll find support in any way. And honestly, if for anyone listening out there, if you want someone to talk to, you can just tweet at me about this. So uh, that that being said, uh, we'll leave it at there for now. Is there anything? Did you want to anything else you want to add in? Otherwise, we'll
Nope.
leave the episode here. Okay. So with that being said, not really the most optimistic, crazy Yabai Kanpai Chronicles episode, but it is a meaningful one and also a very important one as well.
Mm.
Um, we're not going to be talking about the fun stuff with Japan all the time for this episode. This
No.
is also a place for us to go deep dive into deep shit. Uh,
Mm.
Basically, Holly's favorite place.
Yes.
So if you're what was that thing that you said? Hype my hose up. What was it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're hashtag us, hype my hose up on Twitter. That'll be pretty great. Otherwise, that's pretty much it for the episode. You can, support us by subscribing on us to the show on your favorite podcast app, giving us a rating if you want to help out, or reach out to us. I'll just link our social media down below in the show notes to this episode. So with that being said, Holly, thanks so much for co-hosting this, because
of course,
this is honestly a very personal topic to me. I know, like, a little bit of behind the scenes here. I said, like, I mentioned, Holly, I said to you, like, earlier this week that I've just had a really shitty week, and I almost didn't want to do a recording. And when we both said that, like, we're burnt out, we're like, oh, why not we talk about that? Because that feels like it's something relevant to everybody here. So hopefully we can kanpai another time where we're not as burnt out, and we'll be talking about something a little bit lighter, a little bit more exciting and fun, and more travel experience. And with that being said, we'll see you in the next episode. So this is Norman.
Bye.
Oh, you already said bye? Okay.
Yeah, they know who I am by now.
Okay,
Bye.
yeah, true. Right. Bye.